Teachers. What was the best smart-ass response from a student you have heard? Back when I taught first grade, we were doing a writing assignment about Thanksgiving. The kids had to draw a picture of their family celebrating Thanksgiving and then write about it. One little girl drew the table and chairs, and that was all. I knew she just didn't feel like doing the work, so I tried to prompt her. I asked where the food and her family were, and she snapped right back with, "They're washing the dishes." Had to give her credit for coming up with a logical argument for not doing the work. Not a teacher but witnessed as a student. There was literally 30 seconds left of class and my buddy starts to pack up. The teacher didn't seem to mind, but when the bell rang and buddy got up to leave, the teacher said the classic line, "The bell doesn't dismiss you." I do, and buddy just continues to leave. Gets in the doorway of the class and says if it decides when I come, it decides when I leave, and just leaves the class. My grandson, who lives with my wife and I, was sent to office one day for breaking dress code. No belt. The principal asked why he didn't wear it, to which he replied, "My crackhead mother stole it and I didn't have time to get another." Principal got super mad and called us to tell us what happened and what he had said. I confirmed his story. Well, his crack addict mother came to visit last night and we didn't realize it was gone until this morning. I could audibly hear him gasp over the phone and immediately started apologizing. And every time I see him now he mentions it and apologizes. I had a teacher tell a classmate no drinks in class. He got up from his seat, picked up the teacher's drink, and deposited in the garbage with his drink. She sent him to the office. I was doing poorly in a middle school class on account of my mother having terminal brain cancer. This one teacher would constantly get on my case even though he knew about the situation. I wasn't a bad student. I was just severely distracted from the situation at home and couldn't always focus. I missed 2 days of school due to her worsening condition. The day before she died, he left a voicemail at my house explaining my 5 missing homework assignments, but no one really cared. I didn't go to school for a week after her death, and when I returned I said to him, "Well, now that she's dead I can finally finish those assignments, right?" I think he finally understood. The principal gave him a good chewing out too. This was while working with 9-year-olds. We're doing number problems and a kid is having trouble with a sum. The sum is you have 40 sweets. You give half your sweets to your friend. How many sweets do you have now? I grab 40 counters and say to the kid, "Here are 40 sweets. If you give me half, how many will you have left?" Kid turns to me and utterly deadpan says, "I can't give you the sweets. You aren't my friend." A fellow student in my class shouted that it was fricking freezing in the classroom. The teacher naturally told him not to use the F word, so the kid replied, "It's fricking cold in here." Had my class of working class kids at an art gallery. As we waited for our tour to begin, we played on the small playground near the door. A prep school kid in a uniform approached 2 of my boys and said, "I bet I'm smarter than you are. I watched to make sure no blood was drawn. My students can hold their own pretty much anywhere and they don't accept insults casually. But they were cool." "No, you're not. Are you in grade 2? The boy said he was, and one of my boys said, "So then we're all grade 2. So we are all grade 2 smart." He went back to climbing the monkey bars. But the prep school kid continued, "I know I'm smarter. Let's do some math and I'll prove it." The toughest kid in my room looked this guy square in the eye and said, "Well, I'm smart enough not to do math when I'm having fun on a playground." Apostrophe. My history teacher would spend half the class making jokes directed at the students. One student in particular always took the jokes on the chin and never really made any comebacks. Eventually, the teacher called him out and jokingly lectured him about standing up for himself. He ended his rant with, "You've got to be a man. You've got to be like me." The student replied with, "Well, which one? Do you want me to be a man or do you want me to be like you?" Edit, for those wondering. This happened back when I was in high school in the late 80s. It's one of those moments I will never, ever forget. D. In HS, our functions and relations teacher would always start to say something, forget it, and say, I lost my train of thought. Well, one day a buddy of mine replies, it's okay sir. There were no important passengers on board. Edit, for those who are asking. Functions and relations is a subset of finite math. Think of an entire course on the quadratic equation and its various offshoots. Why are you all talking? Because you're not second grade. Kid was sent out of the room. This is in regards to the rule, don't talk when the teacher's talking. I'm not a teacher, but I had a friend in school who was always pretty dramatic. She actually did have vibes though. So we're in this bitchy teacher's class and she keeps asking to use the bathroom. The teacher says no. My friend's like, I have vibes though, and the teacher is like, tell me what those initials mean and I will let you go. So she screams it means I have to shit and takes off out of the room. Student A says to student B, dude, shut the frick up, staff says. Student A, we don't talk that way. In the future find a more appropriate way of expressing yourself. Student A says to staff, oh, sorry, then turns to student B and says, dude, would you please shut the frick up? Well, this one was during coaching classes for entrance exams. The maths teacher reduced a given problem to a simpler form and challenged the students, so this expression doesn't fit any of the given standard forms for us to find the particular integral. So what do you propose we do? A kid from the back shouted the next question. Not a teacher, but witnessed as student. We had a substitute who was leafing through the yearbook and got to the senior superlatives. Our school mascot was the Eagles. She started reading some of them aloud and said, oh, that's nice. Sorry, most school spirited, a student answered back, yeah. Because she's always spread eagle. The substitute couldn't keep from laughing, as much as she tried not to. Let me point out that I'm female since people will assume I'm a guy. I taught in an inner city school. We were talking about prime numbers, so I would have kids give me a number and we'd work out if the number was a prime number on the board. One kid wasn't paying attention, so me being a young teacher, I thought I'd catch him off guard and call on him. It went something along the lines of, Mark, do you have a number? Ha, I need your number. She play it cool. Girl, we can talk after class. The whole room lost their poop and I turned red from embarrassment. They then laughed at how red I got. In a high school physics class, we were learning about friction and what varies how strong it is. So, the teacher asks, so as an engineer, what would be some of the hard parts of designing? Say, racing tires? Some kid in the back says, getting out of bed in the morning. Edit, thanks for the gold. It's, reassuring to know that the plight of the engineer isn't unique. Spanish class in high school. Two guys who grew up in Spanish-speaking families were goofing off at the back of class. One guy says that he could stand the weight of another person standing on his stomach. And the other guy, who was probably just shy of 200 pounds, doesn't believe him. So the first guy gets on the ground in the back of class. And the other guy gets up and stands on his stomach. The teacher sees this and immediately yelled at the guy on the ground to get back into his seat. Without missing a beat, he says, I can't. He's standing on me. The other guy doesn't move because he wasn't yelled at. Meanwhile, the teacher continues to be upset that the guy on the ground isn't listening to her. I witnessed a rather sad one. In my chemistry class sophomore year, one of my friends was going through some family issues. And his dad just left for a year or so. The kid was acting up in class and the teacher was like, do you want me to call your dad? And he was like, if he picks up, tell him to come home soon. A kid in my math class would sleep on his desk. One day the teacher called on him to answer a problem on the chalkboard. He woke up, solved the problem on the board with zero difficulty, and then just went back to sleep. The teacher repeated the same thing a few times with similar results, and then just let him sleep the rest of the year. I'm not a teacher, but this happened in one of my classes a few weeks back. My math teacher is a pretty chill guy and likes to share personal info every now and then. So he decides to tell the class he is getting married this summer break. Most of the class congratulates him and wishes him well. This one girl from the front of the class shouts out, "It has been legal for a year now. Why did you wait this long?" The whole class starts freaking dying laughing and the teacher is just sitting there with his mouth open. Edit, spelling. A kid mocked me when I said, "Don't do that." I started to yell at him and he said, "No man. That's a song." He then spontaneously came up with a rap song called "Don't Do That" and his friends started making beats. I was no longer mad. My friend Brian was in his homeroom class back in high school. The topic of abortion came up as everyone was asking each other if why they are either against or pro-abortion. We're in Texas, so you can assume the ideas and opinions of the majority of the class. So my friend is a very intelligent and quiet fellow, minding his own business in a corner of the room. The class turns to him to get his opinion on the matter. "Someone, Brian. You've been quiet over there. So what about you? Are you pro-abortion?" Brian, "Well, I wouldn't say I'm pro, but I'm pretty good with a coat hanger." Jaws drop. The room is silent as everyone is registering what just happened. Glad I made it to school that day. Just yesterday actually. One of my classes is fun in that we give each other hard times, but all in good fun and accomplish a lot. A girl starts giggling uncontrollably for no reason. And she's a bit of an airhead, so I asked her if she saw something shiny and if that entertained her. Another boy jumps in and says, "Yeah mister. Your head, I'm going bald." I wanted to pretend to be mad, but it was just too damn funny. I have a smart ass response from a teacher story to share. In 8th grade science class, we were learning about the planets and the usual class clown, let's call him K, was making the usual immature jokes about Uranus. Our teacher P, who was a younger, pretty chill guy, wasn't having it. So P tells K to go outside. When K asks which door he should use to leave, P first says it doesn't matter, but quickly comes back with an answer and says, "You know what? Why don't you go out the back door since you like Uranus so much?" The whole class went crazy. Definitely one of the best teacher responses to dumb student comments that I've witnessed. I went to a Catholic school, very strict, lots of beatings. 2 friends and I had been caught, but one of the more violent teachers, Mr. Murphy, off the school grounds climbing in the neighboring estate's trees. After school detention, we're lined up in his office where he is screaming at us for our bad behavior, letting the school down, etc. We expecting a beating or 500-word essay if we are lucky, or perhaps he'll just punch us a bit. He turns to my friend Dave and shouts, "Do you climb in your neighbor's trees at home?" Question mark? Exclamation point. Dave replies, head down and sounding remorseful, "No sir, why not?" Question mark? Exclamation point. They haven't got any. Sir, my other friend literally ended up crying with laughter on the floor. I was shaking with laughter and Dave just stood there, head down, emotionless. Mr. Murphy stood there, momentarily lost for words before shouting at us to get out, and that was it. Funny thing was, Dave never understood why it was so funny. This is sort of a flip from the question, but there was this awesome history teacher I had freshman year of high school who was just always in an amazing mood. We'll call him Mr. Smith. One day everyone is sitting in class waiting for the tardy bell to ring when a kid sneaks a condom onto the door handle. The bell rings and Mr. Smith walks into the room, grabs the handle to close the door, and pulls the condom off of it. Looks at the condom helmet for a split second and stuffs it into his pocket while saying, "Thanks. I'll need this later." In high school, one of my teachers was having a disagreement with a student. I can't remember what it was about, but finally the teacher asked him if she wanted her to call his mother. The student replies, "Do it then. My mama will agree with me too." The teacher then asks him to leave her class. He goes, "You know what, I'm gonna call my mom for you." He then whips out his cell phone and calls his mom on speaker. "Hey, Ma. This teacher want to talk to you." The whole class just lost it. My buddies and I used to like to play ultimate frisbee on the football field during lunch. We were told not to. Organized sports were supposed to be that. Organized. They didn't want kids getting hurt without supervision. Anyway. One day we said screw it and decided to do it anyway. So they turned the sprinklers on us. Didn't stop us. We kept playing and finally they sent a security guard out to get us. Detention for the rest of the day in the cold cafeteria. Soaked and cold, so we started chattering and talking. But it's hard to stay quiet when you're shivering. Anyway. The coach watching over detention told everyone to shut up. "You all sound like a bunch of canaries in a cage." Everyone got silent. Then one person started it. And it slowly grew. "Cheep cheep 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 moo baha yeehaw. Yeehaw." The coach couldn't help but start laughing. Then turned the air even colder. Bastard. I've taught preschool for years. And one of my favorite dad responses to children who are being whiny just to whine is the "Hi. Dart. I'm your teacher. Egg, I'm thirsty. Hi. Thirsty. I'm your teacher, Dart." Anyway. One day. After a long week. I sat down to lunch with my class, preschool. Remember? 4-5-year-olds. And say to a child, we'll call him Tommy. "Boy. Tommy. I'm really tired today." Without skipping a beat. He swallows his mac and cheese. Looks me right in the eyes and says, "Hi. Really tired. I'm Tommy." That was the day I knew I had taught him all I could. Not a teacher. But this happened in an upper level French class where you can only speak French. If you speak English, the teacher scolds you in French. My friend walked in a few minutes late for a quiz. And wasn't allowed to take it. My friend looked at the teacher and said, in English, "That's bullpoop." The teacher looked back angrily and said, also in English, "What did you just say?" My friend, "En français, monsieur." He got kicked out of the class. In middle school. In history class. This happened. Girl, "Hey Emma. C. How do you spell word IDR, Emma?" "CDICTION." She writes it down. Stares at it for a moment trying to comprehend why it doesn't look right. Gets pissed at teacher, class is dying. Teacher laughing as well. Not me. But a colleague told me this story. It was one of his first years teaching. So he was about 22-24 at the time. It was a junior high science class and he told a student to stop messing around and get back to work. The student's response, "Man. I got bitches older than you." My sister, who is a teacher, was taking her kindergarten class through the lunch line. Well. This day was St. Patrick Day. So there was green cupcakes. My sister told the class, jokingly, "Don't eat too many cupcakes. Or you'll turn green." A young black boy looks up at her and says, "Miss Carey. I ain't never seen a green brother before." Hey you, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and hitting like. Also, if you have an Alexa device, you can say, "Alexa, open Reddit stories," to hear some of the all-time top Ask Reddit posts. Thanks for watching.